Well, I'll start. I think that they're all really important, obviously, but I really resonated with building self-awareness. Did anybody else pick that one too?
Nope.
No.
Sorry.
Fine. I think that I feel like that is so key to growth.
Yeah.
And it is such a journey and it's so humbling. And so I think it's really, I think it's been really a big deal for me. But I also picked, be clear about what you stand for.
Yeah.
Like have a clarity around what's motivating, what's important to me. And so those two really stuck out.
Which aspect of the self-awareness?
I think the aspects around knowing what kind of trips me up.
Yeah.
It's like the hard stuff.
The triggers.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
triggers.
that was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did you think about where he said, you talked to the one leader who said, I wouldn't hire someone who didn't know their triggers. In interviews.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're interviewing right now, and I've been thinking, should we just start off with,
What are your
tell
triggers?
Tell us your triggers. Yeah.
I think it depends. I think it kind of depends because I think that what was really interesting about self-awareness is that, it's so much of what we do here and a lot of our assessments and things like that really help with that. So I think that some of it might be new to people in the formalized way that we do it. There are not many companies that have so many opportunities to learn their Enneagram number and know what their style of managing conflict are. So I would say that it's kind of different because coming here from a different company, I knew myself. And so when I got my results from my assessment, I wasn't like, this is so shocking. But I did not have the formal language to describe what it was. I didn't have the formal language to describe my conflict style. So I wonder if it's an openness to growth or some awareness of what your triggers are, even if you can't fully articulate them. Yeah. I wonder if that would be a fair compromise.
Yeah.
That they can't say, they're I never heard of the 5 conflict styles until I started working at Work Wisdom. But I knew that I was accommodating and go straight to compete after accommodating work. I knew that about myself, but I didn't have the language to say what it was until I debriefed and talked about it to know when I do it and how I do it. So it was kind of I knew it, but I didn't know what it was called and those other things. So I think that maybe the growth of being a leader is going through that process of getting the language.
Yeah. When I learned about these 6 different basically capabilities that you need to hone in order to leap to leader, the one that really struck me was around decision making, and specifically where he wrote about listen carefully but take charge. And so I don't know that I've ever seen it quite so clearly put as when he talked about directional guidance, and that it is the role of the leader with decision making and emboldening others to make decisions to provide that directional guidance. I think that I have been really brought up as a leader in very collaborative approaches, and this was sort of a firm grasp on this is what we're doing, here we go, giddy up, this is what and I was just like, whoa, okay, he said it just like that. So I think it's still a growing edge for me. But that decision making and providing that sort of clear, firm, contextual, directional guidance, that's something that I'm still working on, as you all know.
we were talking about in the green room, as we call the living room before podcasting, about this idea though of listening really well. You need to, as a leader, you need to be able to listen really well, but you still have to give direction. You need to be able to balance this and be able to balance this. And sometimes they feel like they're so opposite of each other.
Yeah.
I think leaders get really tripped up on this.
Yeah.
I mean, as an executive coach, I see it every day.
Yeah.
Like, wait, are you leading now? Do you want to lead? Or do you want to listen? Or do you want to listen first and then make a smarter, more informed strategy and then lead? I think that's part of the art.
Yeah.
Can I just say that even though I didn't put this, that is one of my top ones, I did underline a bunch of stuff in the article around it because, well, first of all, I loved how he talked about looking in the ugly mirror. And, you know, we're a positive organizational behavior firm, so we focus on our strengths. We focus on our assets. But he was like, it is true that it trips companies up when they're not able to look at and talk about where they're having problems. And being willing to do that takes so much humility, I feel like. And so this is the quote: resist the temptation to be a cheerleader for the company.
That was the one that hit me because I am work wisdom cheerleader, okay? And I was
You
like,
and
do I
me
have to give my pump? Do I have to hang up my pom-poms if I'm going to be an effective
Yeah.
if I'm going to be an effective leader?
But it's the balance. It's the because then he says you'll want to contrast, or he quotes another person, but he says you'll want to contrast it with the beautiful mirror. The two in tandem can really lead to change. So we don't have to put our pom-poms away.
We can pull them out in special occasions, and then put them away for when it's time to make some decisions and some evaluations. Yeah.
What stuck out for you?
It's funny. I think what stuck out for me is still a growing edge for me as well, which is mastering the art of compartmentalization. It's very tough for me to compartmentalize. So they have their the tips of how to do that. Stay focused on what matters most. And one of the things that I underlined was when problems pile up, it's tempting to seek order in the chaos by listing every issue that needs attending to. And there are times when I'm overwhelmed. I do that. I'm like, okay, here are all the things I need to focus on, or all the things that are going wrong. And instead, what they say is you need the discipline to prioritize and keep the list to fewer than 5.
Okay.
And I found that really helpful because I think even in moving into the managing your emotions side of compartmentalization, it is a lot more helpful to not go into the spiral of overwhelm if you don't have 12 things that you're facing in a day and you're only facing down the big 5. So I think that it's kind of, it's connected to the others. And I think that it's something that is challenging because I do care so deeply, and every detail of my work is important to me. And there are times where even in our meetings, me and Kedren's, she'll be like, so-and-so can help with that. Or like, with the catering, I was like, well, we can do da-da-da-da-da. And she's like, dude, let's do the easy thing. Let's not put, you don't have to put the fine point crazy focus on this task at this moment. There are things that are more important, and where I want to put 110% on every single detail. And it was like, that has been a challenge, and growing and getting, the coaching to be like, it's okay if we take a shortcut in this area so that you can prioritize this. And I think that if you are someone who cares deeply, even saying it's okay to take a shortcut sounds like heresy a little bit, and not going the hard way all the time, the meticulous way all the time, being in everybody's problem all the time feels like something that, is foreign to me.
Yeah, learning. I think that prioritization is the art of learning how to lead, especially in a modern world with so many competing priorities. What are the priorities? And how do I learn to take the B on things that don't require an A+? And what are the 3 things where I need the A+? So I think that's part of the growth for all of us.
Even within the 5, the other 2 get an A. Not even an A+. But I want an A+ on all the things. all the time. And it's just not possible, especially if I want to move into leadership and not necessarily being an executor or a manager, being okay with taking the B and not gasping when someone says B.
Yeah, understanding where that B is acceptable, right? And is that the top priority for the team? And what I'm hearing a lot from everybody is comments around impulse control, so being able to stop and not go too deep into one thing. And then also a lot of emotional intelligence, and a lot that comes up in debriefs that I have with clients, where there is this scale and there's this, it's all about balance. And, as a leader, there's these strengths, one way or the other, but how do you balance those strengths? Because you can't do everything all the time.
Yeah. Did you share the one that resonated for you most, Matt? I don't think you did.
For me, it's honing your decision making. That's always been a challenging one with, being able to clearly, and it's also a little bit of that compartmentalization, separating those emotions from the problem solving aspect, being able to make a decision based on the greater, the best case scenario, because the idea of you're not going to please everybody, you got to just make the best decision. And that's the one piece that Adam Bryant talks about early in the article is one of the big jumps for this character to the next level is they're looking for help making a decision, and they need that push. You need to make the decision, right? You're the leader now. We need you to step into it, and we trust you to make that decision.
Yeah, I love that section too, Matt. I liked where he said, as a leader, you're placing bets. You're placing bets. And I think about that all the time. And so you need to be comfortable with knowing whether or not these bets pay off. And we can't know everything. And so trusting our instincts is also part of that. So, but yeah, this whole idea of, okay, we're placing a bet on this. As an entrepreneur, that's literally what we're doing.
Yeah, we talked about it in the entrepreneurship podcast about taking a risk, taking a bet. Yeah.
Betting on yourself and your ideas.
Yeah.
So which of these have you found most challenging? And maybe it's the same one. The most important one sometimes tends to be also the most challenging for us because it's the one we're focusing on.
Yeah.
Well, mine's a little different, but related, because it's all in the decision-making bucket. But it's this idea of setting the bar for our team's performance. And so this is truly an art form, I think. So, he talks about it's like a giant mixing board. And so how do we figure out how to set the bar high enough so that it's eustress and challenge stress and everyone's motivated and going for it and we're running hard and all of that, but not so high that it's an impossible job and that we're never going to hit those numbers or even if they're numbers, and so I think that learning how to do the mixing board is probably, and because for us, we're still, I guess we're not a startup anymore in year 8, but as we're growing and we continue to grow every year, that mixing board changes.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's more dials on that thing. And so trying to get good at it when it keeps changing is a struggle, I think, for anybody in a growing company.
Yeah, they said in the article, too, that, you're not controlling the external things, too. So you're trying to balance it, not just within the things that are in your confines of control or, with the people changing and all the other things, but it's also the outward environment changes. And so, our clients, the climate, the economy, like all those things. Competition. All of those things are constantly changing. And so that balance is somewhat in your control. And then it's also waving or surfing the waves of the things that are out of our control, that are totally outside of our company, that have nothing to do with how well we do. And I think that was what kind of stuck out to me from that section too, that sometimes we just put our best effort forth and we try to find balance, and then something completely outside of our control happens and we've got to find a way to ride the wave.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm surprised is not in this article is anything about honing your own inner authority, inner peace. Maybe he gets at it a little bit with self-awareness, but you know, I think really leaping to leader requires some sort of centering, because when everything's swirling, how do you ground down and find your own peace and hold the tension for everyone else? So anyhow, I would never criticize Adam Bryant because he's one of my favorite human beings, but he could have added a seventh element. Sorry, Adam. Let's talk.
And you're the one that usually wants to remove.
That's right. I'm the queen of simplicity, and I'm like, let's add another one.
And he does kind of get at that with that quote, that listen carefully but take charge. He gets at it, like you said, but he doesn't give it maybe as much juice as we would want it to have.
Yeah. I think a mindfulness practice or something like that.
I like that.
Anyhow, let's not critique. Let's not look in the ugly mirror. Let's get our pom-poms back out.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Were you looking at me because you wanted me to answer?
Yeah. I was just going to do it.
Yeah. For the challenge, I did put the look in the ugly mirror as a challenge for me, because I think I like to be the cheerleader. I don't want to have hard conversations, you know. But the one that I was thinking a lot about, that I think may be more challenging than I've realized over the time, is the one section about having your personal narrative, which I really do see as like authentic self-communication. You know, he talks about don't be a victim in the sense of don't forget how much control you have, how much you can actually put forth to change things. Maybe you can't change a situation, but you can change how you look at it, things like that. And I think for a long time I've always been like, well, I'm not a leader, so you know, I don't. That's why I don't do that. And so that has been really challenging for me, because yes, I am. I don't get to say no, I'm not. And so I think that it's part of self-awareness too, but that really struck me in this article about how do I talk to myself? How do I see myself? Take that for granted a little bit. And I think it's probably tripped me up by having this story of, well, I'm not a leader, so.
Yeah. I relate to that one. I think it's actually, mine is still within the area. It's funny because I'll like something the most, or something will resonate with me the most when I know I need to focus on it and grow in it. But I think kind of related to the personal narrative is within that compartmentalization was the section on give yourself a break. And I highlighted, you know, one of the CEOs said, you know, when I hear first-time CEOs be hard on themselves, I say to them, if you talk to your friends the way you talk to yourself, you'd have no friends. So stop talking to yourself like that.
Amen.
And I was like, oh, okay. And I started to think about, you know, how do I talk to myself? And maybe even if I think, okay, I am a leader, am I saying when I make a mistake, oh, I'm the world's worst leader when I make a mistake? Or am I being overly focused on things that I'm not doing well? Am I catastrophizing? Am I, you know, doing those things? And so focusing on, there are ways that I talk to myself internally, even without, you know, voicing it outwardly, that I would never do that to any coworker, any person who's, you know, working for me or with me, and I would never talk to a friend like that. So what do I think I'm gaining from that? And so releasing some of that, I think, would be really helpful for my transition into leadership. And I've already been working on it through once again through coaching. There are coaching here, but it was nice to have that reminder and that really clear guideline about when I should just kind of tune that out, turn it off. Yeah.
All right, last question. So do you have any tips or tricks you want to share with the listeners on how you have overcome these challenges or seen your clients overcome these challenges?
Can I go first?
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like something that has been really helpful for me, and I think would be helpful for a lot of leaders out there to do the leap, is ask for help. Ask for help. And in anything that feels like the struggle with the leaping, the stretch that it takes, is to push past the discomfort. That the way that we get to growth and high performance and all of those things, time and again, it's because we are able to endure the discomfort of the thing. That just is how it is. And so being able to push past is great. And it's great when you have people around you who are like, I know this is hard, but I'm here for you. You know? Yeah. And then my last little tip is just the remembering how mistakes are data, that when we learn from them, it's gold. And so those three things, I think, if I can keep them on heavy rotation, the challenges of this leap to leader is much easier.
Yeah.
I really loved his tip around don't be a victim. And, you know, he talked a little bit about entrepreneurs and that they're wired differently than most people. And one way is that they tend not to dwell on bad news. So, I mean, maybe it's toxic positivity, you know, maybe it's not reality tested, maybe it's too much optimism. But the good side of that is that they don't see themselves as victims. Yeah. So they see themselves as action-oriented, sort of optimizers. So if something goes sideways, it's like, okay, well, let's move fast and turn the situation around. And, you know, there must be a pony in here somewhere, right? So we'll have to tell the listeners what that joke is in the notes. Yeah. But I love that idea of, okay, let's not dwell on the bad news. Let's think about, we're not the victim here. There's some opportunity. And how do we think about what we can control and what's outside of our control? Let's think about what assets, what strengths we have, and how we're going to leverage those to go farther faster. Yeah. So that's one of the aspects of this article that I really loved the most. Yeah.
The part that I liked was, and I think would be really helpful for our clients, is the build self-awareness. And a part of that was recognizing your own emotional contagion and how you can impact the rest of your team, and those little decisions about how you show up even in the workplace, how it affects everyone. And one of the quotes from the article says, self-awareness involves recognizing your feelings and operating within a fairly narrow band of emotions. And one of the people that were interviewed said, you often have to be an actor, says Barbara Corey, who has led turnarounds at 6 companies, including Swatch. It's an art. I think that the idea of being an actor might bristle some folks after hearing so much about authenticity and showing up as your whole self. And your whole self does not mean showing up in your pajamas, you know? You still get to pick out your clothes. Yeah. You don't have to be authentically, we don't have to know what you sleep in, you know? And so if you think about it that way and think about how am I dressing myself emotionally, I think that could be something that might be helpful for folks. That if being an actor makes you feel kind of icky because you don't want to seem like you're putting it on, thinking about empathy and thinking about, if I am having a hard day, but someone's having a lot of success on their team, is it possible for me to lay my hard day aside and be excited with them? Or if I'm having some challenges in my own role or my frustrations about how we're doing as a team, is it possible for me to get dressed this morning with inspiration? And so that way I think it kind of removes the idea, because I know a lot of people feel a way about being an actor and they think that means insincerity. But if you know that you have that full range of emotions available to you, it's very real. You can just dress in it and put it on, and recognizing that, like, if you show up at the office and you're too variable with your emotions, people will be reading your face instead of getting their work done.
Yeah, that reminds me with emotional intelligence, like we define emotional expression as the constructive expression of emotion. Like it's great to be inspiring. It's important to let people know if something's off, but it does need to be constructive. It does.
Yeah, and it makes me think a little bit about Freud and the horse and the rider.
Oh yeah.
And and really maturity is when we recognize we're the rider and our emotions are the horse. And we get to sit on that horse. Yeah. And if the mouse runs across the street and the horse whinnies and rears up and everything, we can put our heels in and say, actually, horsey, we're going to just keep walking down this road. Yeah. And because we're in charge, we're the rider. So it's all of that.
It helps. And I think that, a lot of times, because we bring our whole selves to work, which is great, leaders can sometimes fall into the trap of authenticity and oversharing. And there's actually another article in HBR that says how leaders can open up to their teams without oversharing. I think that is something that would be really helpful, because there are times where you need to be human and you need to show you care deeply, or you need to sometimes explain your why, or, explain who you are. That can be very powerful. But if you overshare, then people will end up taking care of you more than they take care of the company. And that is something, it's a tough balance. I think that it requires a lot of balance. You don't want to be too cold.
Yeah, and there's another article, speaking of HBR, called The Authenticity Paradox, and it's pretty old now, but basically what the author says is, yes, we want authentic leaders because we trust them, but if we're oversharing, we won't follow them. And so we need to make sure that we're leading in a way that we still have followers. A leader, by definition, has followers. So you're not a leader if you don't have followers. What she talked about in that article is, we can be going through really difficult things, but as long as we are operating within that more narrow band of emotions, so that we're managing our emotional contagion and we have a plan, then we'll still keep our followers. So how do we keep that plan? And how do we use empathy to recognize how contagious we are as leaders? I'm so glad you brought that up, Janine, because that's such a great part of this article. Yeah,
I think it requires sometimes a little bit of bravery to know how you're being perceived, because I think sometimes the shift to being a leader is recognizing that there are people who are looking at you. So some of us, if we don't think we're being a leader, we don't think anybody's looking at us, and we think we can just be nuts in our But if you realize, oh yeah, I'm a leader, people are looking at me, what are they seeing when they look at me? And how is that affecting our performance? And, is there any way that I can maybe operate? And this is coming from a very emotionally expressive person. So just know that, if you're that leader, I feel you. I'm giving you a big hug right now, because it is something that I have to do, that I love and care very deeply. But I think if I'm being watched, I have to recognize that there are people who are being impacted by those big emotions.
I'm really excited. We have it on the calendar that the leadership team here at Work Wisdom is defining leadership behaviors in a few weeks now. I think we've got an off-site at our house. And so I think it's fantastic timing that we read this article, that we were podcasting on this article, and then we're going to name what are the leadership behaviors here at Work Wisdom. Thank you so much, listeners, for downloading The Behaviorist. Although our custom is to end with a quote, today we wanted to close by wishing you the happiest of New Year's. Our aim for 2024 is to bring you actionable hope. Through the Behaviorist, we promise to deliver the concrete, evidence-based, ancient and modern mindsets and behaviors to help you feel hope, to bring hope, and to even be hope. Happy New Year, friends.